Talia, Grace and Redemption. Chapter 1. The Accident. It was a bright, clear morning when the world seemed perfect, but in an instant everything changed. Talia sat in the back seat of her family's car, staring out the window as they drove through the winding mountain roads. Her father was in the driver's seat, calm and composed as always. Her mother sat beside him, speaking excitedly about the plans for her upcoming birthday. Talia's 12th birthday was only a week away, and her parents had been planning a surprise for months. Although she had pretended not to notice, she had caught wind of her mother's whispers and the suspicious glances they'd exchanged since her dad got back. The world outside passed in a blur of green trees and a blue sky, and Talia couldn't help but feel a sense of peace. It had been a long time since her father had been home for more than a few days. His deployments had become more frequent over the years, but now he was back, and her mother had assured her that he was home to stay this time. They were going to be a real family again. "Are you excited for next week, honey?" her mother asked, turning around with a wide smile. Her eyes sparkled with warmth, the way they always did when she was happy. Talia nodded, her heart swelling. "I can't wait." "Well, I hope you're ready," her father said, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. "It's going to be a day you'll never forget." Her mother gave him a playful nudge on the arm. "Don't spoil the surprise." They laughed, and Talia leaned back in her seat, closing her eyes for a moment. This was the life she had always dreamed of, her family, together, happy, safe, but the sound of screeching tires shattered that moment of peace. Talia's eyes flew open just as her mother's scream tore through the air. The shrill, desperate sound echoed in her ears, freezing her blood. Blinding headlights filled her vision, and the hulking shape of a truck loomed ahead, hurtling straight toward them, swerving wildly across the road. Her father's hands tightened on the steering wheel, his knuckles white as he slammed on the brakes, shouting something she couldn't make out. The car jolted, tires squealing, but there was nowhere to go, only the narrow mountain road beneath them and a deadly drop off the edge. The truck kept coming, unstoppable. In a heartbeat, it crashed into them with a force like an explosion. "No!" Her mother's voice vanished in the cacophony as the car was flung sideways, thrown off the road and tumbling down the steep embankment. Everything spun, chaos of metal screeching, glass shattering, and her terrified scream lost in the whirlwind of noise. Talia's body jerked violently against her seatbelt as the car flipped, her head slamming against the window. Light and dark, ground and sky blurred together, twisting around her as the world collapsed. Then, suddenly, silence. The chaos stopped, and everything was still. The faint metallic ticking of the engine cooling echoed in the quiet. Dust hung in the air, drifting in the soft rays of the rising sun that slipped through the shattered windows. Talia sat frozen, held in place by the seatbelt that had saved her. For a moment, she was paralyzed. Her ears rang, muffling everything but the dull, pulsing ache radiating through her body. Slowly, she blinked her eyes open, the world coming into sharp focus. The car had come to a halt, resting on its belly, its frame crumpled and twisted beyond recognition. "Mom? Dad?" she called, her voice faint and shaking. There was no reply. A surge of panic gripped her as she fumbled for her seatbelt, her hands trembling uncontrollably. She could barely see through the shattered glass and the thick smoke swirling in the air, but dread twisted in her stomach. Her father, who had always been so strong, was slumped over the steering wheel, completely still. Her mother, whose laughter had filled the car only minutes before, lay eerily silent in the passenger seat. Talia's chest tightened as she crawled free from the wreckage, each movement sending sharp pains through her body. She stumbled onto the cold, damp grass, her legs giving way beneath her, and hot tears streamed down her face. "Help! Someone, please!" she screamed, her voice raw and desperate. But the road was deserted, and the only response was the hollow silence of the mountains. Determined, she crawled back toward the car, her fingers digging into the earth as she pulled herself closer. She had to reach them, had to help them somehow. But as she peered inside, the grim reality hit her, forcing her to confront the truth she'd been dreading. Her parents were gone.
He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more, neither shall there be mourning nor crying nor pain any more, for the former things have passed away. Revelation 21 verse 4.